Hey, good morning, Algebra 1. This is Apex Chapter 3. So 3.1 deals with the zero product property. So you've already learned how to factor quadratics. Now we're going to actually solve them. So the zero product property says if two numbers are multiplied and the product is zero, then either one or both of the numbers is equal to zero. So here it's using A's and B's. So it says, okay, A times B equals zero, then either one of those numbers has to be zero. So if I had a 2x equals zero, my x would have to equal zero. Yeah. So that's what that's saying, that at least one of these numbers when you're multiplying has to be zero for the entire thing to equal zero. In order to use this property, we're going to factor quadratic, and then we're going to set all of the factors, including if we pull the greatest common factor out, equal to zero. And then we're going to solve for x. So I'm going to go on ahead and do that with this first one. So I'm looking for something that multiplies to negative 12 and adds to 4. Okay, so I'm just going to write my factors of negative 12. You may have learned the A times C method. Okay, so that would be negative 12x squared. So that's 1 and negative 12, or negative 1 and 12, 2 and negative 6, or negative 2 and 6, 3 and negative 4, or negative 3 and 4. So now I'm looking for my pair that adds to negative 4, and it's that pair right there. Okay. So now I can go on ahead and say my factors are x plus 2 and x minus 6. But you notice we still have this equals 0 here. Okay, so what this says is that either this entire piece has to equal 0, or this entire piece has to equal 0 in order for the entire thing to equal 0. So now we're just going to take each of those factors and set them equal to 0 and solve. So we're going to subtract 2 from both sides, and we get x equals negative 2, or we can add 6 to both sides, and we get x equals positive 6. Okay, so either one of those right there, if we plug those in, will cause this entire function to equal 0. Let's go ahead and try it with the next one. Okay, so I'm going to factor this. Okay, multiplies to 12, adds to negative 8. So 12x squared is my A times C. So that's 1 and 12, negative 1 and negative 12. Okay, and I know it's going to have to be negatives because of that, but I can still go on ahead and write them all out just to be sure I have them. 3 and 4, negative 3 and negative 4. Okay, so the pair that adds to negative 8 is negative 2 and negative 6. So this is going to be 0 equals x minus 2 times x minus 6. Okay, I'm going to take both of these and set them equal to 0 individually and solve. So add 2 to both sides, and I get x equals 2. Add 6 to both sides, and I get x equals 6. Okay. So x equals 2 or 6. Okay, and it doesn't matter which way you write it. Either way works. All right, let's go on ahead and take a look at another one. Okay, so this one's going to be very similar, okay, but I'm going to multiply my 2 and my negative 4, okay, and I'm going to get x squared minus 7x minus 8. Minus 8. 8 equals 0. I need to factor that, so I need to find what multiplies to this and adds to this. Okay, so negative 8 is going to be 1 and negative 8, or negative 1 and 8. It's going to be that negative 8 and 1. Okay, so I'm going to have x plus 1, x minus 8. Okay, see if they're divisible by this right here. So I put that 2 back in front, see if they're divisible. This one is not divisible, so it's just going to stay at 2x plus 1. This one right here is divisible, so 2 divided by 2, right, I can take a 2 out of both of these, is x, and negative 8 divided by 2 is 4. Okay, so those are going to be my two factors. I'm going to set each of those equal to 0, and I'm going to solve. So here I'm going to get x equals negative 1/2, so I subtracted 1 from both sides, and then divided both sides by 2. And here I'm going to add 4 to both sides, and I get 4. All right, let's take a look at this last one here, or this next one. Okay, so I have 18x squared equals 48x minus 32. Well, this is not in the form we wanted in, so we need to move everything to one side. And I like my x squareds to be positive, so I'm just going to move everything to the left. Okay, so I'm going to wind up with 18x squared minus 48x plus 32 equals 0. Now I'm going to take out a greatest common factor if I have one. So 18, 48, and 32 are all divisible by 2. So I'm going to pull a 2 out and I'm left with 9x squared minus 24x plus 16 equals 0. Okay, so now this 2 is a factor. It needs to remain with my factors when I come out with whatever my factored form is. Now I'm going to go on ahead and multiply 9 times 16, and I get 144. Okay. So this time I showed you guys a little bit different way. This time I'll show you the A times C method. There's, several different methods to do this. Okay, so now my factors here, I'm looking for it to add to negative 24. So I'm going to start with something a little bit higher. Okay, like I might start with, 12 and 12, because I know that that multiplies to 144. So 12 and 12, but that's not negative 24x. But if I do a negative 12 and a negative 12, then it comes out right. Okay, so now I'm going to go on ahead and do my factor by grouping this time. Okay, just to show you guys a little bit different method. Find the method that you like and stick with it. So now out of here, I can take a 3x. So that leaves me with 3x times x minus 4. Out of here, I can take a 4. And we're going to take a negative 4 out. That way our signs inside are the same. And that's going to leave me with a 3x minus 4. Okay, so these two match, so I know I'm on the right track. And there's my other one. So 3x minus 4 squared. Okay, but remember, I still have that 2 from the beginning. So all of that equals 0. Now here, because there is no variable there, I do not have to set that equal to 0. Because 2, if I did set it equal, 2 would never equal 0. But I do need to do this one. Okay, so 3x minus 4 equals 0. And I don't have to do it twice. I can just do it once. Okay, so 3x minus 4, add 4 to both sides. And I get 3x equals 4, divide by 3, and I get x equals 4 over. All right, so let's go on ahead and look at a couple other cases where we might need to solve. These are a little bit different because these are not quadratics. Okay, so I'm going to do the same exact thing here, though. So I have a 3x squared plus 18x. What do these have in common? Okay, what is my greatest common factor? So I can take a 3x out of both of them, and I'm left with x plus 6. Okay, that equals 0. Okay. So now, unlike this last one, this does have a variable. So when I set it equal to 0, I can solve it. So I'm multiplying by 3. So to get rid of that, I need to divide by 3. So I get x equals 0 as one of my answers. Then I'm going to set x plus 6 equal to 0 for my second one and solve. And I get x equals negative 6. Okay, so let's take a look at this one. So I'm going to do the same thing. So I need to get this equal to 0. So I'm going to subtract 1 from both sides to start. So 0 equals 9x squared minus 1. Okay, this is a difference of squares. So let's go on ahead and use our difference of squares formula. Okay, so 9x squared, the square root of that is 3x. Square root of 1 is 1. So 3x minus 1 and 3x plus 1. And that all equals 0. So now I'm going to go on ahead and set each of these factors equal to 0 and solve. The biggest mistake I see when students are solving is that you'll think, oh, I can do this in my head, and you'll forget to change the sign. So remember that you have to change the signs because we have to add that to both sides which makes it a positive 1 instead of a negative 1. And then we're going to divide by 3, and we have to get that x completely by itself. And here we're going to subtract 1 from both sides, so we get 3x equals negative 1, and divide by 3. So x equals negative 1/3. Okay? So our answers are then our x equals negative 1/3 or positive 1/3. Let's go ahead and take a look at this last one. So 4x squared equals 25. I have to get it equal to 0, so I'm going to subtract 25 from both sides. So I get 4x squared minus 25 equals 0. Okay, so now this is the same thing. It's a difference of squares again. So that's going to be 2x minus 5 and 2x plus 5. I'm going to set each of those equal to 0 and solve. Once again, remember to change that sign. So I get 2x equals positive 5 divided by 2. So x equals 5 over 2. And here I'm going to subtract 5 from both sides and divide by 2. And I get negative 5 over 2. All right, so those were where we had x's, okay, in both terms, or we had difference of squares. But now we're going to talk about the square root principle. So the square root principle is where we can solve a quadratic in the form ax squared plus c equals 0. So there's no bx term in there. So we're going to use algebra to solve for x squared, and then we're going to take the square roots of both sides. The most important thing here to remember is to get whatever is with the x squared by itself first. Okay, so here I'm just going to circle this x squared or put a box around it. I have to get that by itself before I can do anything. Okay, so now I'm going to add 12 to both sides, and I get x squared equals 12. Okay. And now I'm going to take the square root of both sides. So I get x equals the square root of 12. But remember, when I take the square root by myself, I have to remember it could be a positive or a negative square root of both sides. And so we're going to go ahead and break this down. So the square root of 12 is the same as square root of 3 times 4. Okay. And some of you can do the Christmas tree or whatever. So 4, the square root of 4 is just 2. So I can take that outside of that radical and leave my 3. Okay. So really my answer then is going to be plus or minus 2 square roots of 3 or plus or minus square roots of 12. Ask your teacher at this point where they want you to leave it, okay? Because I'm not sure how they want you to leave it for these problems. Okay? All right, let's go ahead and take a look at the next problem. So I have a 3x squared here. I have to get all of that stuff by itself. So first thing, I'm going to add 4 to both sides. So 3x squared equals 68 plus 4, which is 72. Now I'm still trying to get this x squared by itself. So I'm going to divide both sides by 3. So 72 divided by 3 is 24. So x squared equals 24. Now I have to get rid of that squared. So I'm going to take the square root of both sides. So it's going to give me x equals plus or minus the square root of 24. And once again, I'm going to go ahead and break this down. So 24, I can rewrite the square root of 24 as 4 times 6. Notice that when I'm doing this, I'm always choosing, if I can, something that is a perfect square that I can take the square root of. So the square root of 4, I can take the square root. So that gives me a 2, and that 6 is not a square root, so I'm going to leave it under there. Okay, so one of these would be your final answer. Now this one, you're going to have to pay attention, okay? So notice that I've got the squared outside the parentheses. So I have to get rid of this squared symbol before I can do anything else, because I can't add 4 to both sides until this squared symbol is gone. Because remember, we're always working backwards when we're doing PEMDAS. Or when we're solving, we're doing PEMDAS backwards. So we start with any addition or subtraction not in parentheses, then any multiplication or division not in parentheses, And then in the exponents, okay, so there's the exponent. So to get rid of a squared, I'm taking the square root of both sides. So I'm going to get x minus 4 equals positive 5, okay, or negative 5. So I'm going to go on ahead and write this now as two separate equations. So x minus 4 equals positive 5, and x minus 4 equals negative 5. So let's go ahead and solve both of them. Okay, so I'm going to add 4 to both sides, and I'm going to get x equals 9. And on my other equation, I'm going to add 4 to both sides, and I'm going to get x equals negative 1. So those are my two answers. And then this is just a review. So we're just going to look here at factoring perfect square trinomials. So remember, a perfect square trinomial is where this number and this number, it's going to be the same number to multiply to get the C value as you add to get the B value. Okay. So if you don't remember how that works, it's okay. Okay, but I know here that negative 5 plus negative 5 gives me negative 10x squared, and negative 5 times negative 5 adds, multiplies to give me 25. If you don't remember that, that's okay. Do your A times C method or your factoring method, whatever method you're comfortable with. Okay, but if you know this shortcut, it really comes in handy. So that's going to be x minus 5 squared, okay, would equal 0. So that would be a case where you would have to actually take the square root of both sides and solve. Okay. So in this case, it's just going to be x equals positive 5. If we take the square root of both sides, then we get x minus 5 equals 0. Square root of 0 is 0. And then we add 5 to both sides, and that would give us x equals 5. All right, so let's go on ahead and find this one. So what number adds to 6 and multiplies to 9? And remember, it has to be the same number. So that number is going to be positive 3. So this is going to be x plus 3 squared. And same thing, if we set it equal to 0 and solve, we're going to get x equals negative 3. All right, so the next ones, for some reason, I didn't put very much room on my note guide. So I'm going to do this on a sheet of paper. I'll make sure that your note guides are fixed. Okay. So the first one says solve. Anytime I'm asking you to solve, that means that I want you to find out what x is, or what x can be equal to. So our first one is x squared plus 3x plus 7 equals 5. Now remember, in order to solve, I have to get this set equal to 0. So I'm going to go on ahead and subtract 5 from both sides. So now I'm going to have x squared plus 3x plus 2, and now I'm going to factor that. Okay. So what multiplies to 2 and adds to 3 is positive 1 and positive 2. Set both of those equal to 0 and solve. So I subtract 1 from both sides, and I get x equals negative 1. Subtract 2 from both sides, and I get x equals negative 2. We haven't been checking our solutions, but we need to start checking our solutions because sometimes you're going to get answers that don't work. Okay, so we need to take a look at that. So I'm just going to plug this negative 1 right back in. So negative 1 squared is 1. Plus 3 times negative 1 plus 7. Okay, so I'm going to get negative 1 squared is 1 minus 3 plus 7. Okay, and does that equal 5? Yes, it does. Okay, the same thing for negative 2. We need to check it. So negative 2 squared is 4 plus 3 times negative 2 plus 7. Okay, so 4 minus 6 plus 7. Well, 4 minus 6 is -2 plus 7 equals 5, so that checks. You have to make sure to check these because, like I said, sometimes as we progress, we're going to get some answers that don't work. Now let's go ahead and take a look at the next one. So the next one is x squared minus 2 equals -2x squared plus 5x. Okay, so same thing. I need to get everything to one side. I want my x squareds to be positive because they're easier to work with. So I'm just going to move this 2x squared over to the left by adding it to both sides. And then I'm going to subtract 5x from both sides. So now I have x squared plus 2x squared is 3x squared. I have this minus 5x, and I have this minus 2. So now I'm going to factor this. So I'm going to multiply my a times my c. 3 times -2 is -6x squared. And my factors of -6, 1 and -6, -1 and 6, 2 and -3, or -2 and 3. So now I need the pair that adds to -5, which is going to be 1 and -6. So I'm going to go on ahead, rewrite this. And remember, instead of my -5x, I'm going to replace it with plus 1x, okay, those are x's there, minus 6x minus 2 equals 0. Let's finish factoring. Okay, so 3x squared and 1x, they both have an x in them, so I can divide by x. So my greatest common factor is x. 3x squared divided by x is 3x, and 1x divided by x is 1. -6x and -2 both have a -2 in common. -6x divided by -2 is positive 3x. That's good. It's matching. If the sign wasn't matching, then you know that maybe you pulled the wrong sign out there. And -2 divided by -2 is positive 1. Those match. That's one of my factors. And my other factor is what's on the outside there. Okay. Now I can set both of those equal to 0 and solve. So x minus 2 equals 0 and 3x plus 1 equals 0. So I get x equals 2. Here I would subtract 1 from both sides, and I would get 3x equals -1. So that would be a -1/3. But once again, I need to check these. So I'm going to plug 2 in, and I can either plug it into where I've changed it here and set it equal to 0 or the original. It doesn't matter. Okay, so 3 times 2 squared. Remember, you have to do that first. So 4 times 3 is 12. Okay. Minus 5 times 2, which is 10. Okay. Minus 2 equals 0. That does check. Now I'm going to try to plug the -1/3 in. So 3 times -1/3 squared minus 5 times 1/3 minus 2 equals 0. And when you're squaring a fraction, remember you have to square both the numerator and the denominator. So that's going to become 3 times 1/9 minus, I'm just going to multiply straight across, that becomes a 5/1. That's minus 5/3 minus 2. All right, so now I've got some fractions I'm starting to deal with. Okay. Well, this becomes 3/9, so I can actually simplify. And that becomes 1/3 minus 5/3 minus, all right, that's a 2/1. I need a common denominator of 3. Okay. You guys need to make sure that you're still comfortable working with fractions. Okay, so that's going to be a 6/3 equals 0. All right, so I have 1/3. I'm going to subtract 5/3. I'm going to subtract 6/3. So that gives me -4/3 minus 6/3 gives me negative 10 over 3. It does not give me 0. Okay, so that's why you have to check those solutions. That one right there is not going to work. So our only answer here then would be the x equals 2. All right, let's go ahead and try this very last one. So C says x plus 3 squared plus 4x equals 0. It won't do me any good to subtract this from both sides and take the square root of both sides, because then I would be taking the square root of a negative number, okay? And we can't do that yet. So I'm going to take this x plus 3 squared, and I'm going to rewrite it as a quadratic. So x plus 3 squared is a perfect square trinomial, so that's going to be x squared plus this times 2, so this times 2, so 3x times 2 is 6x, plus this squared, which is 9. Okay. And then I still have that 4x equals 0. Now we can go on ahead, combine our like terms, and solve. So x squared plus 10x plus 9 equals 0. We need to find the factors that multiply to 9 and add to 10. So I'm betting that's 1 and 9. So this is going to be x plus 1 and x plus 9 equals 0. When we solve, we got to set each of them equal to 0 individually. And we get x equals -1 or -9. Okay, let's go on ahead and plug those back in. So I'm just going to plug them back into the original. So -1 plus 3 is 2 squared is 4. Okay, so solving, I have 4 plus 4 times -1, which is -4, and that equals 0. So -1 works. Let's try 9. 9 plus 3 is 12. 12 squared is 144. Okay. Ah, that's a -9. See? Even I make mistakes, and I'm perfect. All right, so -9 plus 3 is -6 squared, which is 36. Okay. Plus, we have that 4 times -9. 4 times -9 is -36. So that does equal 0. So those both work. Okay, so make sure that you're checking your answers and making sure stuff works. All right, we're skipping 3.2, so next time it will be 3.3. Have a great day.